Welcome back everyone to another Zero to Hero journey. In this video I won't be as focused on the character progression as much as other journeys. Instead I wanted to go over some of the currency farming strategies I've been using for my late league start. As I knew there wasn't going to be a lot of time between this character and the new PoE 2 patch, instead of trying to min-max it and waste my time there, I decided I wanted to practice some of these strategies for future use to make my playtime a bit more consistent. As I won't be going into the ins and outs of this build, I will leave Buffalo Baron's Arc Ignite video in the description. That is the idea this character is following, so if you do like what you see, please check him out. Now I specifically chose this build because I hadn't played in a few months, and I knew that there was some new endgame content, and I wanted a strong and safe start that didn't require a lot of spending power to get online. So that way I could focus on the currency strats, completing the Atlas, and seeing that new content. But before we get into that, let's finish the campaign and get into the match. Now then, just like anyone who hates heist and expedition farming, my first course of action was Transfigured Gems. Thankfully I did get a Penance brand during the campaign, and when I remembered to sell it I got 100 Chaos, which allowed me to fully gear up my tier 1 to 10 blaster, which I decided on Blade Vortex. I decided on this specifically because it needs literally next to no gear for the first half of the Atlas. It's so cheap I purchased the two most important uniques for it during the campaign, which are Hrimsor and Bitter Dream. And the rest of the gear cost me less than 40 Chaos, and most of that was covering the level 20 Val Blade Vortex I bought. I decided I would swap to Ignite once I completed Uber Lab, just for simplicity's sake. Little did I know it would take me 20 repeat trials to do this. While my suffering is in the background, I want to cover my plans. Firstly was the passive income strat, which simply is just Betrayal. It was a 2-5-2-5 setup with Gravicious and Rin in Transport, and Guff and Janus in Research. Gravicious just for the div card jackpots, didn't end up getting anything, and then Rin just for the consistent Maven chisels. These were very lucrative. Janus for Kadira luck, again, didn't get anything from this, and then Guff was for the free mini Doriani ring crafting. This didn't really work out, so next time I would most likely change him to Riker or Vegan, again just for more jackpots. But obviously the biggest pull of Betrayal is Medallion and All Flames. I got 3 medallions in total, and I got around 5 Gilded All Flames and 5-ish Ethereal. In total this netted around 50 Divines. Second is the active strat, which is more useful more quickly. This is resonator selling, more specifically one socket. You can start this strat as soon as you have 20 Atlas points, a few Chaos Orbs, and your first map. Simply, you path directly to Packed with Energy and Mining byproducts, and then you run to each sulfite node in the map and just hope that you get lucky. I found that every 10 or so maps you could cash out around 12k Azurite, and that would get you around 30 resonators, which for my playtime sold for around 3 chaos per resonator, meaning I would get around a 900% return on my 10 chaos investment. And because this took me so long due to my luck with the trials, I had around 3 divines and around 500 chaos my eventual arc swap. Now that I've swapped over to the initial Arc Knight setup, I can start another strat which I decided would be Breach and Legion farming in Dunes, mainly for XP and key selling. My initial desires for these strategies was a little investment and big rewards. Timeless Emblems were very consistent money, however Breach with such little investment was honestly incredibly underwhelming compared. I think during this time I managed to get around 3 to 8 of each emblem. However, I only got 1 Zoth and 1 Esh Breachstone, which is actually quite surprising to me, as they each had equal investment on the Atlas tree and Scarabs, as it was just 1 Legion, 1 Breach in the Atlas device. Emblem farming in the end was very rewarding and very simple, while Betrayal was still going strong in the background, providing that supplemental currency. At this point I did decide to remove Breach completely and transition to the final version of this build, which was a Melding of the Flesh swap-in. I upgraded all of my jewels to Awakened and decided to add Delirium in place of Breach for my final plan, which consisted of Delirium Orb farming, Emblem farming, and stacked deck farming. In the Atlas device, I was putting 4 Divination Scarabs of the Cloister, the Legion Mapcraft, and then as soon as I was getting into the map, I was just spamming Varlark until everything was dead. At the end of the journey, I was able to run around 20 maps an hour, and each of the maps would cost around 20 chaos to roll and Scarab, and 60 dunes would cost the divine as well. And on average, I was getting around 25 stack decks a map, which at the time was a third of a divine, around 2 delirium orbs, which was around 30 chaos, and 1 emblem, which was around 20 chaos. So for an hour's work, once I'd sold everything on the exchange, I was getting 6 raw divines just from stack decks alone, around 600 chaos from delirium orbs, and around 400 chaos from emblems. It's totaled around 12 divines an hour. I was incredibly happy with this, and will 100% be building on these in the future and using these as my base currency farms. Now, I want to leave the video on a boss montage as I finish the Atlas and lay my character to rest. Thanks again for watching, and see you next time.